Hi there. Welcome. Thank you for checking in to this, our first conversation as a rebranded group of men, uh, a journey through photography. Thanks for joining us. My name is Kenneth Nelson. Joining me in conversations are my very good friends, Mark Skinner and Greg Cleghorn.
Happy
We
Black
go a
History.
long way back in time, and one of the main links that brings us together is our love of photography. In this episode, we'll call short on film. We're discussing not only there's been recent shortage of color film in the worldwide film market. We'll also be talking about a little bit about film history and my pet peeve about film glorification over the past couple of years. Before watching the rest of this uh, conversation, I urge you to click on the two links below this video, and they'll link you to the two topics of conversation that we're focused on. One is a Vice article, and the other is a article from another periodical. So what I wanted to do first, before we get into the conversation, is to discuss the two articles. Give me just a sec. I'm sorry about this. Okay, we'll discuss the Vice article first.
Happy
Okay,
History
go
Month.
ahead, Greg. You
I
had
was just
something?
History Month. That's it.
Okay. So
If I want me to continue, I got something to say. Oh, okay. You got it up. Go ahead.
in this Vice article, I'll just read the first couple of paragraphs. So the article reads, why there's a color film shortage right now. Photographers in photoshops around the world have been struggling to get their hands on rolls of 35 millimeter film for months, if not years. There was only a single box of color film displayed on a rack outside Photographia and Techni, a small photography supply shop in the Greek island of Aegina. On the windows behind it, the store advertised in English that it sells film, but the box was empty. Its inner goods, three rolls of 35 millimeter color film, now a scarce resource, were being kept securely behind the counter under the watchful eye of the shopkeeper, who shrugged at his pitiful supply. Where's the Fuji? He said. Not long ago, the phrase film is dead echoed through dark rooms, photography shops, and studios. Within a few months of 2012, Kodak filed for bankruptcy, and Facebook acquired Instagram for $1 billion. But as nostalgia crept in a decade later, that grainy film aesthetic became all the more alluring. Today, analog cameras are now as staple and accessory as a sling bag. So I'll just leave it there because that's just to get you into the sort of the synopsis of this article. There's another article, and I hopefully you'll be able to follow along. A simple solution to the color film crisis. Are you able to see this article as well?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, cool. Color film is in some kind of crisis. While 2022 has given us some good news, the release of ADOX's new color mission and Orwo's promised NC500 film, the lion's share of color film is still made by two surviving giants of color film photography, Fujifilm and Eastman Kodak. So I won't go into too much of this, but basically, there's a worldwide film shortage, and we just go into it a little bit and just try to figure out just talk about the film shortage in general, and maybe and we'll get further into it as the conversation goes along. What's this? What It's funny because Kodak. There's we have Facebook buying Instagram, the digital onslaught of digital film of digital cameras, which causes the demise of the production of film, which actually in some ways, as people who are coming into photography via digital are now seeking a more authentic or more organic form of photography, now researching and going back into film, but now finding that film is in short supply. What do you think?
Well, I think folks should get used to that because shooting film, coming from a film, sheet film and roll film background, it is slow. Okay, it's not like instant gratification. You whip out your camera or your phone and bam, 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 you got the pictures. You can send it around the world. I found a roll because I'm going through some things. I found a roll of film and put it in what I thought was a 1 hour Photoshop. Turns out, hey, it won't be back for a couple of days. But that was the reality of it. When you had to, do color film or do a project or whatever, you were beholden to the lab. You know, you had to be patient, and if you were trying to do this and put food on the table, you had to keep track of what you shot, how you shot it, you know, and trust the lab that they would tell you how they developed it and what temperature, blah blah blah, so that you can duplicate those effects that you get back. And then, you know, I'm going to be waiting a couple of days, and I'm going to get the film back. You know, probably prints and a digital scan, but you know, it demands patience. Stills, you know, roll film
The
demands
question
patience.
I have for
I
you,
understand
what
people,
what
but
what lab are you what you know what type of lab are you going to? I mean, is it a consumer lab or is it a professional lab? Because even when we started, there were professional labs and 1 hour labs, and then mail away where it took a few days.
yeah. Well, this was a professional lab, but you know, like Ken was saying, the kid in the article. Thanks for this topic, though, and happy Black History Month with slow film. It's ah, it's just, you know, okay, yeah, Fuji and Kodak, the giants. Yeah, it's an incredibly complex operation, you know, and then to, you know, punch all the holes and put it in a little can and paint it real pretty, and but it's like, well, where do you draw the line of between, you know, Hollywood or filmmakers being the major uh, consumers of your film, where most of the you know, consumers, standard regular consumers, are taking pictures with their phone because, you know, I mean, something gets improved and you want the newest, latest, greatest. You know, it's a big
So
difference.
when I have a question, when you say where do you draw the line, are you talking about from the manufacturer's point of view, the lab's point of view, the consumer of the product's point of view? Who are the you? Who's the you that you're referring to?
When I say you, I mean the unless I misspoke, but what I mean is, you know, yeah, there's a shortage because, you know, it's like Miles Davis, you know, where he would get up on stage and he would turn his back to the audience and play with the band, you know, because for a good chunk of his audience, they had turned their back on jazz and went to, you know, bebop or whatever other music was hot at the time. If I'm a manufacturer and I'm cranking out film all over the planet, and then people start using their cell phones, and I'm stuck with all of this film that's got an expiration date on it, you know, I would let the consumer level folks, you know, wait a while. Let me prove to me that you really want this film. Then I'll go back into production with it. But until then, you know, yeah, there's got to be a shortage if you
I
want
mean,
to.
you bring up a good point. I mean, you know, a company like Kodak and Fujifilm and Elford, for that matter, they all had the capacity to create thousands of rolls of 35 millimeter film daily, and so the demand has dropped completely to, you know, maybe 1,000 rolls a month is sufficient for a lot of people, maybe 10,000 a month. So that's that as opposed to 10,000 a day. So, you know, that is understandable. But I think the real issue um, is, I mean, I guess, Kenneth, I guess your question, is it because of the photographer's point of view about the supply, or is your question about manufacturing? Because these are symbiotic relationships, right? There's the person who uses the film, and then there's the organization that creates the film. And so, whose perspective are you concerned with when you bring up this topic, or the multiplicity of concerns that you have?
I have multiplicity of concerns. I think one is supply and demand, right? And you know, it's really intriguing because I don't know if I've ever seen something like this happen in any other industry, where a technology is created that supersedes the prior technology for whatever the process was happening. So photography, you have a technology which is film, which is 200 plus years old, 200, yeah, right. And then you have this other technology which is 20 years old, right? Not even 20, 10 maybe at the time, and it just supersedes something that's 200 years old, right? And basically gobbles it up. But then the people who are now using the photography are the call for, because I think it had to do with mass market, right? Film was used in mass market, therefore mass market, the whole of people who are using camera film were using it. Then you have the aficionados, or the people who are shooting photography regularly, who are dependent upon it, right? And so what happens is that at a point in time, the whole market switches to digital. That includes the person who goes who photographs once a month, once a year, and gets their film processed at the drugstore, right? Versus those people who are shooting daily, weekly, who are buying film regularly. And what it is that the people who are shooting regularly are really dwarfed by the once in a while photographers, because there are millions of them, right? And what happens is they're driving the market. Those millions of people who are buying rolls of film once every other month, once a month. But the amount of people who are doing that dwarfs the amount of people who are buying film regularly. So therefore, the production is not for those regular users, but the casual users, right? And now the casual users are switching over to digital, which drives the market, which then plummets the film market. And those who are buying film regularly or using regularly are now suffering that.
Well, I think Greg brings up a really good point with bebop. I mean, bebop was a prevalent. Actually, it wasn't prevalent. It was starting to become it was when jazz, which was prevalent in the 40s as the dominant musical form, right? Bebop becomes sort of an offshoot of that and more of a niche market. And to this day, you'll still see practitioners still creating new bebop pieces, but not to the point where every time you turn on the radio, there's a jazz tune. I mean, I'm sure at one point in history, if you turn on the radio, there was some sort of jazzy, you could find jazz very easily without having to go to the specific jazz station. So I think film has become sort of this niche market, and it's now in this area where, when I say film, I mean film photography has become a niche market. And so the idea that, maybe as a photographer, I should sort of revisit film or visit film as if it were of historical significance, the same way a palladium print was a significant historical process for us when we were in school.
Yeah, but I think there's a disconnect there, because I think if you're talking about platinum palladium, I think that was a niche market all through, so it really wasn't that prevalent. Where film is just a mass market, color film is a mass market ideal, and it really doesn't really equate to bebop, because film is an exhaustible supply, where bebop is a recurring thing, because you listen to the same song over and over and over again. The production of new songs are going to be consistent, because the recording medium, if you're going to talk about the recording medium, then yes, 8-track tape, Super 8, yes, those mediums are going to change to digital. That's going to change. But as long as you have the original recording medium, you can sort of upgrade your recordings to a new medium, where you can't do that with, you can sort of do that with film, but you have to have the existence of film to put it into a digital medium.
As artists get to those old compositions, they have new arrangements, new orchestrations of it. My point is, yes, you're right that film has pretty much been mass market, and it was promoted as a mass market item, but it is no longer a mass market item. And then the question is, as you brought up, will the market return to some semblance of what it was, or will it entirely be a specific group of dedicated film photographers and a few hobbyists who are just sort of interested in learning new processes?
Yeah. Well, let me share this with you, because I think this is a good point right here, and I'll just this part of that article, one of the articles, and I'll read this paragraph, which I think is kind of huge in the making. They are still struggling, and this is regarding Kodak. They are still struggling to meet demand, even as logistics and industry returns to something like pre-COVID normality. Partly, this is a problem which stems from decision a decade ago in 2012. Kodak shuttered its giant film production plant in Guadalajara, Mexico, after that had been churning out film for 50 years. The Mexican plant had 16 huge spoilers for producing film, and Kodak's chiefs decided they would never need more than 2 of those spoilers. The rest were scrapped or sold. That estimate didn't account for the revised interest in film that started a few years after, few years after, and Eastman Kodak have been playing catch up ever since. So basically, they gutted a major part of their production model because they didn't think there would ever be a resurgence in film usage, and now they're at 1/10 the production levels that they would have had they kept those other spoolers going. So I think that's an interesting play on what you just mentioned, which is we will never catch up because Kodak, a major part of it, had destroyed or sold off major parts of the production thing, never assuming it never would be revived again. Interesting. Capitalism at its best. I love it.
But you also have to look. It's kind of like Kodak's management, has to come into question because they did the same thing to the plate glass industry when they came out with the Brownie. Brownie changed the game completely. It put the camera in the consumer's hands. So maybe they remembered that they got stung before and said, okay, well, the party's over, fellas. Let's just get rid of this gear and weather the storm. But now they've got digital cameras, but they were out in front with the digital. I remember shooting the Kodak, that little beehive they had on the bottom of cameras that you could shoot 2 megapixel images and send it around the world as long as you had a computer connection. But I don't know.
When they got desperate, here's the thing. We speak about Kodak as if the management team from 1953 is the same from 1997, the same as now. Maybe a few people might have been there in 1997 who are still there now, but it's not the same management group. And when they did go into bankruptcy, even the film market didn't really keep them afloat. They had to sell off a lot of their patents. They sold a lot of patents, all of their digital patents, and they kept their chemistry patents. And they felt that they were basically a chemical company. So they do a lot of dyes and printing and those types of concerns. They pretty much stuck with photographic processes and kind of got away from electronic processes.
So, for one thing I want to, because you mentioned there's really no parallel, but it's like when computers came out, they were clunky, they were desktop, but then when laptops and everything, they were able to get, compressed in small motherboards and small transistors and, laser etched circuit boards, nobody really wanted a desktop computer anymore. So I'm sure there was like a bunch of companies stuck with these clunky, desktops when people could do their work anywhere, walk down the block. Oh, I had an idea. They could crank open their laptop and bing and send it off a Wi-Fi signal, or work in the park or work from wherever, on top of a mountain. The industry shifts, the technology changes, and I just want to say good luck and have at it to those folks that are coming at it, maybe with a fresh eye. They might be able to explore some different things with film photography, but, you just got to be patient.
Okay, so let me.
And it's too, so go ahead.
Okay, let me just put an equivalence to that. Let's keep it in the computer category because you just brought it up. Can you ever imagine a resurgence in the use of a 386 processing computer?
I can imagine it, but it'd be awfully, I won't say it's dumb. It wouldn't be productive. A 286, no.
No, but
Apple's,
yeah.
No, but I think maybe the last maybe 7-8 years, I would be surprised if excuse me, if, as Greg mentioned, desktop sales have increased. I mean, there's a certain capacity that, everyone has to be able to reach the web. They have to be able to have conversations like this through the various services. And, at a certain point, there's only so much you need. What usually drove the technology was the increased requirement of the software, particularly the gaming community, is what drove the 286, 386, 486, the Intel architecture, and then with it was video and animation rendering that drove the Mac computing power. But I think in a weird way, there are a lot of computers that are sold today that are kind of enough to do what we need them to do. And I think that's one of the reasons why, a cell phone, or excuse me, a smartphone has really taken over, because the capacity of a smartphone is so much greater than even a 486 was. It has enough capacity to do a great amount of the work that we require it to do. But I just want to say, back to the film shortage issue, it isn't so much a shortage as much as it is, as you pretty much articulated, they are only going to produce so much of it until the market proves that that it needs additional resources. I mean, Ektachrome used to be everywhere, and I just did a quick search this morning for bulk rolls of Ektachrome, because Greg had mentioned bulk rolls in another conversation. I couldn't find it. I did find one bulk roll of outdated Kodachrome on eBay for $110, 100 feet. I don't know how many years outdated it is, but that was the part, that was what most people used when they were working. I mean, if they were photographing for publication, that was it. You used slide film almost entirely for maybe about 20, 30 years, right? And then that was replaced by the ability to transmit.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
I didn't do anything.
That's okay. Okay. All right. Let's continue on. Okay. And I'll make this quick. Ooh. All right. What I want to do is talk about the the future demise of film. And I think it's going to be related to the cost. All right. So on screen right now, I have what I paid for a roll of black and white film back in 2015 was $4.55 a roll. I brought 10 rolls, and that was $48.50. Okay. Now I will switch. I'm going to switch off to B&H, and B&H, same roll of film, same film, is now twice as much. So instead of buying 10 rolls for $48, I'm now only able to buy 5 rolls for $48. All right. So, and I mean, what is this? Is this a sign that the prohibitive ability to purchase film because it's just too expensive will be its demise? What do you think?
It's always been expensive. When we bought a roll of film, before we started processing our own, or when we started doing C41 or whatever, you had to factor in how much it's going to cost you to process it. That's always been a concern. One of the best, the Ektachrome, is that, once it's processed, that's your final, until you want to pick and print. But, well, I don't know. People that wanted to use it will pay the price. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's all negative film, right? That you're talking about primarily. It's black and white and color negative film.
Yeah, but this is
not much transparency film, and
right.
So you can process your own. You can find the chemistry for C41 relatively easily. E6, I only found one supplier of transparency processing kits for home.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that I'm in my head as I brought about this question. It seems to be a vicious. It's a weird cycle, and if the cost is prohibitive to continue to buy film, but your love of the film and its organic nature keeps you involved. How long will it keep you involved? And at what cost and what price would the film have to be for you to just say, okay, this is just too expensive?
Well, I think what you're presuming is that people are purely expending. That's the cost of doing business. If you're a gallery showing artist, you are creating print. I mean, you can figure out how much it would cost for a sheet of, 11 by 14 paper and how much it costs for the chemistry and factor that all into the price. But if you're selling a print, and just for the sake of easy numbers, for $750, the amount of money spent on creating the work of art is negligible, right? So the idea that $20 for a roll of film is expensive is relative to how much you feel this is going to return, how much of it's going to return for you. If it's just expenditure, sure, $21 is a lot of money for a roll of film. But if you're a working professional and you are either selling the use of the photo or you're actually selling a print of the photo, then it doesn't cost. Or if you're photographing because you like it stylistically and then you're scanning it and then you're posting, there's only the cost is the cost. It's sort of like I want to be a carpenter, but I don't want to pay for the wood.
Yeah, I think what would have to be the contributing factor is because I think anyone who is in business in terms of the film market is now going to be dwarfed by the casual user or I forgot the terminology that we're using for the prosumers.
The enthusiast?
Huh?
Prosumer, enthusiast?
Yeah, the enthusiast, right? Because the enthusiast is what's driving the market, where before it was the mass market that was driving the film market. Now it seems like it's the enthusiast who's driving the market, not the business practices or the fine arts who are basically using that as an expenditure. But it's the enthusiasts who are driving the market and who are basically forcing Kodak's new entity to hire more people to produce more film.
Right. Well, I mean, let's face it, the recreational golfer, right, is probably the person who drives golf apparel and club sales, and not so much the professionals. There aren't so many professionals that could support several manufacturers of clubs. There are the people who enjoy the game who are aspiring to be as good as their favorite professionals, and those are the people who are driving the market. Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And I think the same goes at this point in history with film-based photography. I think to a certain extent, some of the digital photography. I mean, I think we all know that a lot of camera sales are based on, people who are extraordinarily interested in the technology and the potential capability to capture eagles in flight. I mean, whether or not they actually go to photograph eagles in flight is a different thing, but one of the primary concerns as I look through camera reviews is the ability to stop action at numbers of intervals per second, whether it's 10 frames per second or 120 frames per second. That seems to be a very important issue, and so that is of concern to professionals in a specific niche market, whether it's auto racing or wildlife. But not everybody who's a pro photographs. And if you're a portraitist, you don't necessarily need 120 frames per second in your camera. You just don't need it. So I guess what I'm saying is with the film, you have to kind of decide what it is you need. I mean, do you need black and white? Do you need color? Do you need a transparency that you're going to scan or create an internegative of to print a C print?
Yeah, because I think we have to consider that most professionals who are photographers are shooting digital, and they're not.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Most professionals who are shooting professionally, most photographers who are shooting professionally are shooting digitally.
Right.
They're not shooting film, so they're not going to support any market that is run by an enthusiast. So if the enthusiasts market goes down, then it's gone.
But also like one of the benefits of tech is that you can output a digital image to almost anything. transparency to a print a negative to black and white. I mean, it's just well, I mean, again, if you want to shoot film, have at it. It's a
Yeah,
great.
I mean, you're
Wow.
absolutely right. I mean, when I was in the copier business, there was one of the initial selling points of the color copier that was sold in the late '90s was that if you printed on the on 10-point colored stock, the way the toner was laid down, it had a certain oily sheen on it. And so if you polished it with a cloth, with one of those Hilford anti-static cloths, you could get a luster, a glossy luster, as if it were a photographic print. And that was of great appeal in the late '90s. And since then, almost everything is sort of some type of inkjet print. You know, the technologies change, and so do the aesthetics as the new technologies become more popularized.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. And Mark, you have something for show and tell. Are you still able to? You would still want to talk to that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
These are basically, they're just two film. I was just going to talk about two film photographs that were done in the early '90s. So this was done before I started working in the studio. This was it was a model test that we had done, and with model tests, you basically are testing to see how you and a model work together, and also how a model displays the clothes. This was done in 1992. This is a chrome. This is basically the original cropping. I did have to crop a smidgen on the all four sides because the curvature of the slide. This is actually a slide. I scanned it myself by just rephotographing it. And that's really it. You can tell it's a slide. I mean, you see the floor, the dirt. There's a little bit of dirt there. I mean, people during a test, if you have enough models go through, you're not going to get them all to clean their shoes in the old days. And I tried to leave it as it was because this was before the mass popularization of Photoshop. So this was, showing the leather jacket. Now, from my perspective, it's okay, but I really should have had a light that was, hit the jacket right on the front from the left side, so we really got to see how the jacket separated from the skirt. But this is before I worked in a studio, so I didn't know any better. But it's a nicely composed photograph, and it's a great effort. But with film, you can see how if you're not getting the exposure right with light, the blacks get a little murky. They get blocked up on a transparency. So I retained the, what I've done. You can go to the next one. And this was a black and white photograph that was converted into a halftone because I had some comp cards created. This format is also a little bit truncated because I had to make it fit. I don't remember the initial size of the card, but this was a halftone. That's why you see that sort of checkerboard pattern. But that was a black and white photograph that was done either 1990, 91, or 92. I don't honestly remember. But this was an exterior photograph. That's a Norma Kamali swimsuit that was loaned to the model for this session. This is also very similar to the original crop. Really only on the bottom part of the frame it was cropped. So basically the top, the side, and the two sides are the same. And it's funny. I remember one of the big deals was sort of getting a zillion shades of gray when you had a great black and white print, but then you were always at the mercy of the offset printer. Whenever someone printed your work, whether you went to a quality printer to have something done or not, was what dictated whether your work looked good. So, Greg was saying you're at the mercy of the lab. I think one of the really nice things about today is that the artists, whether they're working in film or whether they're working in digitally, I'm not an advocate of digital retouching, but I do appreciate the fact that you do have the control over the darkroom part of it. Not so much the retouching part of it. It bothers me a smidgen, but the fact that you can do darkroom work is nice. You can. And Greg's squinting like, what do you mean? What is the difference? Well, the difference between what you would have done in the darkroom versus what you would have done with an airbrush or a paintbrush.
Digitally, there's almost Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
That's just a personal aesthetic.
Okay, guys. All right. We're going to close it out here. And we want to thank those folks for continuing to join us and who have lasted this long. Again, if you have any questions or comments about this topic, please leave a comment or a question in the comment section below. Subscribe while you're at it. It would help us go a long way in reaching more people, because I think what we discuss here is of importance and is uniquely different than some of the other conversations or some of the other people out there who are talking photography, because it's just another, again, 3 different points of view in one setting. With that, you have anything you want to close out with, Mark?
I just want to say one last thing. If you're a photographer and you have not tried photographing with film, try photographing with film. If you can afford to do so, try photographing with film and processing your own film. And if you can, rent a darkroom in your area if there is one, and then print your own photographs. So you've seen it from the entire, from the inception, from the seeing the image, photographing the image, processing the film, printing the film, and really appreciating that entire process. It is complete from photograph to print, and it's a wonderful thing, and it is the thing that has made generations of photographers really serious practitioners of the craft.
Sounds good. Greg, any parting notes?
Amen. Yeah, getting to know the process is big, you know, from film or loading your own film like we did at Pratt. But parting notes, man. Well, happy Black History Month, and you know, look up like Kurt Vanderzee, and get an idea of what he went through back in the day doing work. And he's a picture taking man, one of his best books. And you know, and Gordon Parks and what he did with the Vogue and FSA out in the Midwest, or the Dust Bowl, to, you know, to today's shooters, see who's doing what. You know, there's a lot of imagery, and however you capture it, you know, respect the medium and it'll respect you. Learn your camera, learn your gear, learn what you can do with imagery, and get out there and shoot. Photography just keeps on giving as long as you keep giving. Okay, that's all I got.
Okay, I think I'll leave with 2 points. One is, if you're a prosumer or a photographic enthusiast, I think if you're looking to get into film, do it now, do it soon, because there's no telling what the market's going to do in terms of the continuation of film. Also, if you're shooting digitally and you want to get an idea of maybe not necessarily shoot film, but to exhibit an image within an organic quality. In other words, have some texture on your screen or in the final print, then having a digital plugin that creates that effect would probably be better than not having it at all. So it would be good experimentation to try a plugin that offers grain to your image, or that offers some sort of subtleties that are sought in film that are replicated digitally. And to be honest with you, I don't know if anyone's going to be able to tell you the difference between a computer-generated organic film versus a scanned film. So that's my opinion. I guess other people may differ, but I don't think you'll be able to tell.
One thing, like we kind of stumbled into it. Well, I'll speak for myself. I stumbled into it, like when you cook the film and the emulsion starts to peel away from the cellophane, you get some effects that I have not seen in a computer generated, you know, special effects package. But, you know, experiment. It's fun.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that that actually leads to an interesting thought, which is, in order for something like that to happen in an accidental nature, the person that happens to has to have the ability to foresee that in a future digital plugin.
That's
right?
true.
So if that person does not exist, then that issue doesn't happen. Mark, what'd you say?
It's a hot plate dark room, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's it for us. My name is Kenneth Nelson. I'm here with my good friends Mark Skinner and Greg Cleghorn. We thank you for joining us in this journey through photography. Take care.